Assalamualaikum and salam sejahtera. My name is Khadijah binti Azmi with the matrix number of A214339. So I'm going to explain to you what is undue influence under legal provision. So section 16 subsection 1 of the Contract Act 1950 said that a contract is to be induced by undue influence where there is subsistence relation between the parties and one of the party has the position to dominate the will of another party to obtain an unfair advantage of the other. So this can be seen in the case of Uzatura and Kanapa Chekia and others, where the Privy Council held that it is not sufficient to have a mere influence because the influence must be undue in the way that the dominant person used his position to take an unfair advantage of another party. Section 16 subsection 2 also explains that a person is deemed to be in a position to dominate the will of another where he holds a real or apparent authority over the other party, or where he stands in the fiduciary relation to another party, or he makes a contract with someone who has mental illness or affected by age or mentally or bodily distress. So section 16 subsection 2 can be seen in the case of Salwa Hanim and Haji Abdullah, where the plaintiff is living with her sick husband and the defendant is her brother-in-law who's been taking care of her business and family matters. And after her husband passed away, the plaintiff wanted to take legal action to cancel the contract in which she had already transferred the property to the defendants, and she argued that they used their position to pressure her into making the transfer. Section 16, subsection 3, paragraph A explains that a person who is in position to dominate the will of another and then enters a contract into another party, he has the burden of proving that the contract was not induced by undue influence, and this can be seen in case of Raghunath Prasad and Sarju.
Hi, my name is Fatim Balkis binti Fatzila. My metric number is A214332. So today I will be talking about undue influence in elderly. So undue influence occurs when someone manipulates or pressure another into making decisions that do not reflect their true intention. It happens when someone in the positions of power takes advantage of another person's trust, dependency, or fear, often for personal or financial benefits. In some cases, undue influence can be more aggressive, turning into coercive control. Elderly people are particularly at risk, and this can deeply affect their final wishes and how their assets are distributed after they passed away. The growing concerns regarding undue influence over elderly in Malaysia has become a significant issue due to the country's aging population and increasing instances of elder abuse. So this problem is made worse by several factors that make it hard for older people to protect themselves or ask for help. So the first factor is financial dependency. Many elderly individuals are financially dependent on the family members. This dependency can lead to a situation where elderly individuals pressured into making decisions about their assets, savings, and property. Besides, a significant factor that makes elderly individuals vulnerable to undue influence is because of lack of awareness and understanding of their legal right and protection. Many elderly individuals are not fully aware of their rights when it comes to financial decisions, property ownership, or creating or updating legal documents like wills or contracts. Without this knowledge, they may unknowingly agree to terms or agreements that are not good for them. So the last factor is stressful and emotional situation. During difficult times, their judgments and decision-making abilities may be clouded by a strong emotions or stress, and making them more easily to get influenced by others. For example, when elderly people in emotional unstable, they are not rational in making their decision. So to conclude everything, elderly people are more vulnerable to undue influence because of physical, emotion, and mental changes that comes with age. So I think that is all from me. Thank you so much. I will pass to the next presenter.
Assalamualaikum dan salam sejahtera. My name is Akilah Hana binti Abdullah and I am going to talk about undue influence over elderly individuals on healthcare decisions. In Malaysia, there is a high level of respect for elders, but not all households share the same moral values. Elderly individuals are vulnerable to undue influence, coercion, manipulation, and neglect, especially regarding decisions about their health and well-being. Undue influence occurs when one party uses their dominant position to exert unfair pressure on another party, leading to decisions that benefit only the influencer. Fiduciary relationship can be defined when one of them stands in a position of trust of the other, or one of them stands in a position the other naturally reposes confidence and places trust in him. Healthcare decisions are especially prone to undue influence when the elderly person is reliant on caregivers, medical practitioners, or family members. Physical and cognitive decline in elderly people can impair their ability to make informed decisions. It requires the ability to understand, judge, and decide if the action or transaction is acceptable, which may be compromised in the elderly. The doctrine of undue influence now extends to healthcare consent, where elderly individuals may be pressured by family members, doctors, or caregivers to refuse medical treatment, potentially leading to harm or unfair disadvantage. Medical decisions are considered vulnerable to undue influence, particularly when a family member benefits from the patient's decision, such as through a will. These are case examples related to undue influence over elderly in healthcare decisions. The first case is Encik Noria and Syed Ali. The court found that she was a feeble old woman, unable to leave the house, relying entirely upon the respondent for everything, even for her food and clothes, and leaving the management of her affairs to him. In fact, she had no knowledge of her own affairs or the value of her properties, so that she was completely in the respondent's hand. The Privy Council held that when the appellant executed the deed, her relationship with the respondent was amply sufficient to raise the presumption of the influence of the respondent over the appellant. In another case, Kao Cheng Poon and others, and Kao Cheng Bok and others, and another appeal, the deceased was a man of great wealth, and an issue arose whether the deceased had been unduly influenced by his third son, Cheng Poon, into making certain gifts. Cheng Poon was the only son who lived with the deceased and was the deceased's favorite son. The High Court held that a presumption of undue influence was raised and that it had not been discharged. The deceased being at death's door and are totally dependent on Cheng Poon and his family provides the assumption of Cheng Poon and his family having a great influence and pull over the life of the deceased. The court held that the 1992 wills were the product of fraud and undue influence. In this case, the court ruled that undue influence can be a ground to invalidate a will, which might also apply in healthcare-related situations where a person is coerced into making decisions. Lindsay L.J. stated that the basis of the doctrine of undue influence is not to save persons from the consequences of their own folly, but to save them from being victimized by other people. Thank you, that is all from me.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Adam Daniel bin Hanisam. So for today, I will talk about consent of undue influence in financial decision. A person is manipulated, coerced or pressured into making a financial choices. For example, they have been influenced by someone who have a bad intention to enter into the agreement. Because of that, it can affect the integrity of their decision and lead to negative financial outcomes. For example, they can lose their money. The influencer that influence the elderly in making financial decision, usually in a position of trust. For example, lawyers, financial advisors, family members, and so on. There are several key factors of undue influence in financial decision. The first is the victim vulnerable. For example, if their spouse or family members died, they did not have a knowledge regarding how to make a good financial decision, so they depend on others. The second is the influencer assumes power, authority, or control over the one being influenced. For example, a financial advisor convinces a client to make investment that benefit the advisor personally. The third is people that have been influenced by in terms of loan or other financial arrangement. For example, a lender pressures a borrower facing financial hardship to sign a high-interest loan without fully explaining the consequences. Okay, how undue influence in financial decision can affect elderly? First is legal and social consequences. For example, if their family members discover they have involving in financial exploitation, it can lead to broken family relationship. The second is loss of trust. Parties may be lost trust in the ability to make independent and rational financial decisions, especially if they have been exploited in the past. Okay, the third is affected with debt accumulation. For example, if someone have been influenced by others to use a multiple credit card, so at the end of the month, they struggle with a high paying debt. There are several ways to prevent undue influence in financial decision among elderly. The first is we have to spread awareness and education about the finance. For example, we can provide class or seminar regarding how to make a good financial decision without depend on others. The second is get advice from the experienced oversight. For example, a professional consultant about finance. Okay, the third is by taking proactive communication and planning to prevent undue influence. For example, if we want to obtain a loan from a bank, we have to ask the bankers regarding what the term in the agreement mentioned about. And we also must have some knowledge to understand the agreement to avoid undue influence. Okay, the first cases that show undue influence in financial decision is the case of Nalamal and another versus Karupanan and another. In this case, the first defendant broke a document and asked the plaintiff to affix her thumbprint on it without informing the plaintiff that he want to use the title as security for the loan from the second defendant. The court allowed the plaintiff claim because the first defendant did not convey to the plaintiff that he want to use the title of the disputed land as security for the loan from the second defendant. This case shows that undue influence in financial decision happen among elderly. The second case is John versus Butters. In this case, the plaintiff, illiterate, intelligent and ignorant of business affairs. He always made frequent change to his will and he had become increasingly reliant on the advice of a distant relation of his deceased wife, Mary Johnson. This case shows undue influence among elderly because the plaintiff always relying on other people's advice, regardless the advice have a bad intention or not.
Moving on to the next subtopic, which is enhancing safeguards for the elderly. The first point is creating awareness. By doing educational campaigns, you can recognize the undue influence because raising public awareness is the first step to prevention. And the second, community programs, workshop, and media outreach, where these platforms can also offers practical advice and interactive learning opportunities. The third one is targeted training for professionals in healthcare, legal, and also in financials, because professionals who frequently interact with seniors are in key positions to identify undue influence. And the last one is empowerment programs for the seniors to build confidence and inform decision making. Okay, so the second point is legal safeguards in contract law, where ensuring understanding of agreements. Contract requires all parties, including seniors, to fully comprehend the terms. Capacity assessment by professionals need help determine if cognitive challenges impair the understanding. For example, in the case of Bank and Goodfellow 1870, where the case emphasized mental capacity for valid contracts. And the second is protection against undue influence. Legal safeguards address power imbalance in trust-based relationships. Presumptions of undue influence can apply if one party holds significant control over senior. For example, in the case of Royal Bank of Scotland and Attridge No. 2 in 2001, where this case is stressed the need for independent advice. And the third one is transparency and fairness. Contracts with seniors should use simple language with full disclosure. Remedies like rescission of contract or damages protects the seniors from fraud and misrepresentation. Moving on to the third point, which is legislative reforms. Mandatory capacity assessment for significant agreements. This assessment ensures that seniors understand the implication of high-stakes agreements, reducing the risk of exploitation. And the second is penalties for exploitation of the elderly. Introducing strict penalties for those who manipulate or exploit seniors acts as a deterrent and reinforces societal commitment to protect the elderly. And the third one is policies to uphold autonomy and dignity in contractual dealings. Legislative reforms must balance protection with respect for seniors' independence, ensuring that they retain control with their decisions while minimizing risk of exploitation.
So to conclude, undue influence is a rising issue in Malaysia, especially in elderly, and we definitely need a comprehensive and multifaceted approach, as mentioned by my team members, to combat this issue. So that is all from our group. Thank you so much.